Okay, let's jump right into it. I want to kick off this explainer by having you think about two really fundamental questions. First, what makes someone a true anomaly in life? Is it the person born to a king who just naturally becomes the next king? Or is it the person who has the odds completely stacked against them, where reaching the top seems literally impossible, yet they somehow make it anyway? And second, what defines a truly great politician? Does greatness mean hoarding all that power and milking it for everything it's worth once you get to the top? Or does it mean maintaining absolute radical simplicity? Like actually living exactly like the everyday common man, even when you're sitting at the absolute peak of authority?
So with those questions in mind, today we're exploring the life of Karpuri Thakur. We're going to break down his incredibly unique leadership style because, honestly, it serves as the ultimate blueprint for modern political integrity. As you'll see, there was this intense, direct connection between how he lived and how he led. We're going to explore how his extreme personal simplicity perfectly mapped right onto his empathetic governance in the Indian state of Bihar.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. An anomaly in politics, 2. From poverty to politics, 3. The power of extreme simplicity, 4. Governance driven by empathy, 5. The revolutionary reservation formula, and finally, 6. A blueprint for modern integrity.
All right, Section 1, an anomaly in politics. A truly unique leader.
Section 2. From poverty to politics. Let's take a look at his grassroots background. To really understand his unbreakable character, we have to look at exactly how his origins shaped his entire worldview. His story starts in a social structure that was, frankly, as rigid as a fortress. He was born in 1924 in a small village to a poor barber family, and their income was so low that just getting 2 meals a day was a real struggle. But his mother pushed him to study. She always called education his real wealth. And as a student, he felt the deep sting of caste discrimination firsthand, which really planted these early seeds of rebellion in him. Fast forward to 1942, he's just 18 years old, he joins the Quit India movement against British rule and ends up jailed for 26 months. Think about that. While other teenagers were dreaming about their futures, he's sitting behind bars writing, reading, and dreaming of this new equal India. When he finally walked out, he had zero money, zero status, but he had something way more valuable: the absolute trust of the public. By the time he ran for office in 1952, he wasn't campaigning with giant convoys. He was literally walking from field to field promising service, not politics. So the takeaway here is that his political capital was built 100% on public trust, not a bank account.
Section 3. The power of extreme simplicity. The ultimate public servant.
Okay, so he wins in 1952, and he walks into the assembly in a simple white dhoti and basic slippers. People actually mocked him. They couldn't believe a guy wanting to be chief minister would dress like that, but he'd just smile and say he was simply the public servant. And there's this incredible story that perfectly captures this. As a newly elected representative that same year, he gets chosen to travel to Europe with a delegation. The catch? He didn't even own a coat. He actually had to borrow a friend's coat just to make the trip. So during the journey, the delegation meets with the famous leader of Yugoslavia, Marshal Tito, and Tito immediately spots that Thakur's borrowed coat is torn in several places. Touched by the raw honesty and simplicity of this Indian politician, Tito actually orders his aides to bring a brand new coat and personally gifts it to Thakur. And Thakur, he accepted it with a smile, zero hesitation, zero embarrassment. Because for him, poverty wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was his identity, his reality, and his core connection to the people.
He had this famous declaration. He'd say, "Policy is not what saves power, but what uplifts the people." And the thing is, this wasn't just some catchy campaign rhetoric. His physical reality completely dictated his political philosophy. His personal humility wasn't just for show, it was the bedrock of literally every single public policy he went on to champion.
Section 4. Governance driven by empathy. Dismantling the barriers.
So let's look at what actually happens when a leader's own understanding of hardship translates into groundbreaking policies. When he got into executive power, first as education minister and then as chief minister, he just started tearing down systemic barriers. Step 1, he rips out English as a mandatory passing subject in schools. Why? Because he knew that for poor, rural kids, English wasn't just a language, it was this massive, invisible, elitist wall keeping them out of the education system entirely. Step 2, he abolishes the land tax on unprofitable land, instantly pulling a huge financial weight off the shoulders of struggling farmers in Bihar. And Step 3, I really love this one, he tackled the everyday indignities. In the Chief Minister's Secretariat building, the elevators had these signs that said officers only,
meaning the lowest-tier workers had to climb endless flights of stairs every day, arriving completely exhausted. Thakur had those signs ripped down immediately and opened the elevators to everyone. It sounds like a small detail today, but back then, it was a massive act of systemic rebellion.
And he just kept this empathetic blitz going. He completely waived school fees for poor children, becoming the first chief minister in the entire country to make education free all the way up to matriculation. To push back against social division, if he caught wind of an intercaste marriage happening in a village, he would literally travel out there himself to attend it, proving that equality has to be something you practice, not just talk about. He strictly enforced the use of Hindi for official government work, just so everyday citizens could actually read and understand the rules that were governing their lives. And, totally understanding the desperation of the youth at the time, he set up a massive employment camp that instantly handed out jobs to over 9,000 engineers and doctors.
Section 5. The Revolutionary Reservation Formula. A truly revolutionary step. Now, his most impactful and absolutely his most controversial move happened when he decided to fundamentally shift the balance of power for deeply marginalized groups. Based on the Mungereel Commission report, he brought in what became known as the 1978 Karpuri-Thakur formula. This essentially re-engineered opportunity in the state using math. He rolled out a 26% reservation quota, and he sliced it up very carefully. 12% for other backward classes, 8% carved out specifically for the economically backward within those classes, 3% for women, and fascinatingly, 3% for the poor among the upper castes. Including economic backwardness like that, it was a wildly visionary, totally unexpected move for the 1970s. I mean, this was decades before it ever became a standard conversation nationally. But as you might expect, upending centuries of social hierarchy did not go smoothly. There was massive backlash. Protests totally erupted on the streets. Thakur was targeted with intense, deeply personal, and highly insulting slogans from upper caste groups who basically accused him of dividing society. But his counter-argument never wavered. He firmly believed you literally cannot have true equality without a level playing field, and that acknowledging caste barriers is the absolutely required first step if you ever want to tear them down. Eventually, the immense political pressure and internal rebellion within his own party forced him to resign as chief minister. But the crazy part? He walked away without a single regret. He was totally satisfied that he had done exactly what was right for the future. Section 6. A blueprint from modern integrity. The standard for today's leaders. To really cement his status as the gold standard for modern political integrity, we have to look at how he handled the two things that bring down almost every leader: family and money. He kept a ruthlessly strict boundary between his public duties and doing favors for relatives. There's this famous incident where his brother-in-law comes to him, hoping the chief minister will pull some strings and score him a government job. Thakur just sat there quietly, reached into his own pocket, pulled out a 50-rupee note and handed it to him, telling him to go buy some tools and restart his traditional family trade. No favors. He also frequently wrote these super strict, 3-line warning letters to his son, Ramnath, sternly telling him never to give in to greed or let anyone use his father's position for gain. For Thakur, principles literally always ranked higher than blood.
And that brings us to a comparison that is just striking. When Karpuri Thakur passed away in 1988, after spending his entire life in politics and serving multiple terms running the state, his total worldly assets were exactly this: his simple, ancestral hut. That's it. He didn't even own a tiny scrap of land in the capital city of Patna. I mean, compare that to the expectations we have for politicians today, right? Now, a single 5-year term is practically seen as a golden ticket to amass massive wealth, multi-generational estates, VIP lifestyles, the whole shebang. Karpuri Thakur left absolutely no wealth behind for his family, but what he did leave was an immeasurable legacy for his people.
Which brings us to the end of this explainer, but it leaves us with a pretty provocative question to chew on. Today, you see leaders from all across the political spectrum praising Karpuri Thakur, constantly placing garlands on his statues. But we really have to ask ourselves, can today's leaders actually emulate his ideals? Is it even possible within our current system to replicate that kind of profound mix of absolute personal simplicity and totally fearless public empathy? Or is Karpuri Thakur's level of integrity just something that is forever lost to history? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, always keep demanding more from the people who lead us.